The strangest thing happened to me this week. I was out by the lake and I came upon this tiny leprechaun named Luther. Well, the market fluctuations had pretty much decimated his gold portfolio, but he told me that he was going to deputize me to give out 5 wishes. He couldn't do it himself because he was social distancing, diabetes. Well, come on in, because all of a sudden, I'm your frickin' fairy godfather. Hi, I'm John, and this is Bogdan. In 2015, we gave up our day jobs and started our own freelance creative business. Join us on our journey as we figure out how to earn a living as artists, introduce you to those we meet, and share what we learn along the way. This week's theme is permission. What do we need to do to get it? Who can give it out? And how will we know when we've received it? And if we get this right, permission could be the very thing that we need to change our creative careers completely. We've traveled around a lot over the last years, but built into those expat jobs is the notion that international postings are temporary, just for a handful of years. Sometimes visa restrictions require people to move, or company policies, but largely we global nomads, we just get itchy after a while, and we need a new start. Well, each time we left a job abroad, we could create a new beginning. I could try to be someone new, and I didn't need to clear that change with another living soul. I didn't have to ask permission. I could easily be any kind of person I wanted to be. As creatives, I think many of us feel as though we're somehow cheating, particularly if we've made that jump to a freelance career. We're afraid of what others are going to think about us. We're secretly afraid that we're bums, lazy, and not working as hard as everybody else. We feel selfish, self-absorbed, and therefore isolated. We have to keep to ourselves, because if we don't, our secret will be revealed. We're actually frauds. And we're not just paranoid. People really are watching us, and they're making judgments about us all the time. We've been home now for over 2 months due to the COVID-19, working our butts off. And daily, my dear elderly neighbor says, "I'll bet you guys can't wait to get back to work." Or my father will call and ask what I'm doing, and I say that I'm painting. And he says, "Great, can you go to the pharmacy and pick up my pills?" Neither of them means any harm, but neither thinks I am in any way working. We're taught in school that in order to be professional, we need to have the proper training and credentials before we can call ourselves an engineer, an artist, or a writer, or an actor. I'm all for education, but you really don't need any more training to be an artist than you do to be a parent. It just sort of happens. And then you get better and better about doing it. But the fear and self-doubt are present even for those who have done all the work, gotten all the degrees, and carry all the correct credentials. So are you ready for wish number 1? As I raise the magic wand, get ready, because my first magic spell will be to give you the permission you need to become whomever you want to be. Are you ready? How does it feel? What are you going to do with this newfound freedom? Who will you be? Jot me a note in the comments below. I'd love to know how it went. When you were a little kid, I don't know if you had the same experience I had. Basically, I went to my parents and I said, what should I be when I grow up? And my dad sat me down and he said, son, you should really just follow your heart, follow your bliss. And I said, well, I'd like to do art. And he said, I would be so proud to know that you were an artist. I mean, sure, there might be other careers that pay better and have more security. You could be a doctor, lawyer, a business executive. But I think it's better if you just follow your heart. We'll supply you with all the finances you need and buy you all the art supplies. So all you really need to do is worry about honing your craft and becoming a better painter. And the rest will come. Does that sound familiar to you? Because it didn't happen. It didn't happen.
The thoughts of youth are long, long thoughts. What dreams, what feelings shape the pattern that we call the innocence of childhood?
My parents fought me. I remember having huge fights with my dad because he said, I'll send you to school. You can do anything you want to do. And I said, great. What if I want to play clarinet? And he was like, absolutely not. So I'm sure most of us grew up in a way that basically didn't value art and creative expression as a career. They thought it was fine, and you go ahead and do that as a hobby, and that'll make you happy, and it's cheaper than race cars. It is so important for creative people to be able to create. And in this week, when we're talking all about giving ourselves permission to be anyone we want to be, we also need to be able to do anything we want to do. Because to limit yourself in that way will stifle that ability to succeed. Now, let's be honest, I have given up my Olympic dream. I will never be a great shot putter. Of course, I might be better at shot putting than running. There are certain limitations, but frankly, those have a lot to do with my interests. I didn't develop this body for athletics. But it is vital. I see people all the time who are changing their careers, who are leaving their law practices, leaving their business. I knew a lady in New York who worked her tail off in corporate America so that she could open a goat farm in Connecticut. Lawyers who are leaving their practices just because they want to be artists. They're just not fulfilled. So we can't really shut off that spigot. That creativity is going to come through. So it's really important for us to know ourselves well enough to build a scaffolding around our lives so that we can support this creative outlet, or we're never going to be a success. Failure is such a difficult concept because we seem to have such a huge aversion to it. Failure brings shame, and in some cultures, shame even to your whole family. It's seen as weak, feeble, corrupt, irresponsible, selfish, or even dumb. If you were raised in the Western world with the heavy influences of Judeo-Christian culture, we're born failures. Adam and Eve screwed it up for all of us. And all but Lot and Noah's family were wiped out because of failure. That's a hard act to follow. In school, we were taught social norms. We're given grades on our achievements. We're labeled, we're grouped, and we're evaluated all the time. We compete for a job, for a spouse, and then we start the whole process over again with our children. It's a wonder any of us can function at all. And yet, the whole of the scientific method is based on failure, of trying time after time after time until truth is described. And there are so many stories of some of our greatest role models who have failed repeatedly on their path to success. They describe failure as a necessary part of that process. And they suggest that if we're not failing often, we're not moving forward. How can failure then be so much of a stigma to us at all? I know it hurts to fail, but it also hurts to tweeze between my eyebrows, and I'm not stopping that. If only we could find a way, even if only with our creative path, to stop fearing failure. If we could stop judging the work of others as a failure, and our own work as well. If we could turn the dial just slightly to view failure as a learning opportunity, as a step forward, as a refining moment that is leading us to success. If only, wait, we can do that. Wish number 3 can bring us all to reclaim the word failure as something to celebrate, as a badge we've earned. We can change our perspective enough to count failure as a formative act. So on the count of 3, do it with me. 1, 2, 3. Now how does that feel?
So by the age of 10, Joe was already starting to become a failure in terms of the school situation.
You know, there's something else we need to worry about. Imposter syndrome, or imposter phenomenon. Go look it up on Google. There's lots and lots of stuff. And you know what I'm talking about. They say that 70% of the population suffers from this, but to varying degrees. For some, it can become crippling and actually affect their lives. We can't fall into that category. Imposter syndrome is where you are convinced that basically you are incompetent, that you don't deserve any success that you've achieved, that you don't deserve the job that you have, that you're really uncouth, that you're unsophisticated, you're uneducated, you probably have bad breath. You just absolutely feel that you're an imposter in the world, and that sooner or later people are going to discover it and out you as being a total fraud. That's obviously not the case. And you have gobs of information and evidence in your life to show that you're not a total disaster, that you're not incompetent, that you are as good as everyone else. I think creatives suffer from this even more so because we put ourselves out there so totally when we're producing our creative output. We also depend on criticism for us to get better and better and to reach our markets and things like that. So if we're afraid of failure and we don't want to admit to anyone that we're not perfect, then it makes it harder to get that criticism and take it for the helpful, constructive criticism that it can be. So how do you combat this? Well, the good news is it's not a disease. The bad news is it never really goes away. But you can do things to help. And the best thing to do for imposter syndrome is to name it when you see it. Recognize those thoughts, recognize those statements in your speech that indicate that you really feel like you're totally out of your depth and that you're one interview question away from being exposed as a total fraud. When you hear yourself saying that, when you think those thoughts, check them, because to recognize them will help a lot. Then you can start to reprogram that. And you can start to work those fears to your advantage. As I said, it can make you more humble. It can make you try harder. If you know that you have a particular weak spot, let's say you're an artist and you feel like you're not as good as all the rest of the artists in your studio complex. If you really feel that your art's not good enough, maybe that's where you spend some time building that confidence, building some evidence that in fact you are good enough. Enter some contests, enter some juried exhibitions, get your work out in front of the public, get yourself interviewed for a magazine. Those things will convince you and give you absolute evidence that that's absolute bull. The most important part is that we don't let this imposter syndrome stifle our creativity, keep us from applying for particular exhibitions, for going out for that dream job, for asking someone out on a date. If it's affecting our lives, we have to do something about it, because our self-worth is completely wrapped up in our artistic product. And if it's affecting our artistic product, it affects our success. There are two kinds of people. I just love doing my own YouTube videos because I can just decide these things. Yes, there are only two kinds of people. One believes that life just sort of happens to you. And if you're lucky and you take advantage of opportunities, you can be a success. So their job is to keep their eyes open, align themselves with those who can help them, avoid failure or perceived failure, and strike when those opportunities knock, beating everyone else to the punch. I often think that these folks only realize they are a success when they look back at their lives. And when they do, they're often able to discern a hidden pattern that they never knew was there. Now, the other kind of person is more self-motivated. These people believe they can make themselves a success, and they strike out with a plan on how they will rise to the top. They may stumble and fall along the way, but they are as invested in the pathway to success as they are to achieving it. Their motivation is learning, growth, networking, and taking the next step on their planned journey. These people know very well every success they have achieved because they have made many, many deliberate choices along the way. They have become wiser and more talented with each step forward. Of course, since they value the process so greatly, they may never stop moving forward because the goal is less the destination than the path. These people do not sit in a rocking chair remembering. Whichever kind of person you are, it's important to remember that both of these types of people think that the other type is crazy. Studies suggest that the second type of person achieves more than the first, if only because the first is a closed system. For the first group, success depends on external forces rather than internal ones. And once the perceived success is achieved, the ride is over. I know I personally resonate more with the second group of people, though I realize that may have a lot to do with the values of where I was born. Bogdan is from Eastern Europe, and his experience and values are a bit different. Ideally, we could all learn to mix the two worldviews a bit and pull the positives from one and de-emphasize the flaws. But I'll leave that to another video. As creatives, success may very well look different to each of us. I would love to be famous, but I'm not sure I would ever want to be Andy Warhol. I want to be a great artist. I want to live off my art. And I want to add something to the story of art in history. I guess I dream of fame, but not celebrity. I'm also 60, which means the arc of my career is doubtless steeper than an artist who is emerging, say, at 19. But then again, that may make me a bit more motivated. However we get to success, and whatever that ultimately means to each of us, we must allow ourselves to get there. There are so many obstacles. Our families and schools may dissuade us from following a creative path. We are so much more vulnerable to changes in the economy, as art tends to be a luxury purchase. Our creative disciplines often make us turn inward, and so things like running a business, and networking, and marketing our own work becomes burdensome. and foreign to us. But we have to have permission to do all of these things in life that make little sense outside our world. If society, family, and institutions won't give us permission, we have to give permission to ourselves. So our final magic wish is granted when we decide to always look inside ourselves for permission to succeed. So thank you, Luther, wherever you are. Thank you guys so much for watching. It means the world to us. Take a moment to subscribe, to hit that notification bell, and help us out on Patreon if you can. Drop me a note in the comments and let me know your reaction to this week's content, because I want to get better and better on my own path to success. It sure would be great if we could take that trip together. Have a great week. Bye.